Revealed, how my retirement funds helped clear $50,000 in debts, an incredible transformation. Joe stood behind the counter of the diner, the warm glow of the neon sign outside flickering through the window. The smell of bacon sizzling on the grill hung in the air, a comforting embrace that so many in the small Midwestern town had cherished for decades. But today, his heart weighed heavy, and the hum of chatter felt different. The diner, once a bustling hub filled with laughter and the clinking of silverware, was starting to fade. He was losing the battle against mounting debts, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on him like the morning fog that rolled in so often. In his 50s, Joe was the embodiment of resilience. A devoted husband and father, he fought tirelessly for his family and the diner, a legacy he wanted to pass down to his children. But the spirit that had once fueled his optimism was beginning to flicker. He worked long hours, flipping burgers, prepping food, and taking on odd jobs where he could, but it never seemed enough. The debts grew, each bill a reminder carved in stone, taunting him from the kitchen counter. Meanwhile, his wife Sarah, weary from the burden of household responsibilities and their son's looming college expenses, felt the strain too. It was as though they were on an emotional tightrope, one misstep and everything could come crashing down. The nights spent arguing over bills that kept piling up seemed endless. "Why can't you see this isn't just about working harder?" she had said, her voice piercing the charged silence of their living room. Joe's heart ached. His unwavering optimism had started to feel like a heavy weight dragging them both down. Then, the moment arrived, the glimmer of hope that sent his heart racing. Joe learned he could access his retirement funds, a potential lifeline to the $50,000 of debt that loomed over them like a dark cloud. It seemed like salvation, a way to ease the worry and stress that had begun to erode the foundation of their family. But the thought of dipping into his retirement funds filled him with dread. Was he sacrificing their future for a temporary fix? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Joe debated his decision, a surprising wave of community spirit emerged. Neighbors and friends rallied together for a fundraiser at the diner, bringing with them a sense of connection and unity that rekindled something deep within him. As he watched familiar faces fill the diner, laughter echoing against the walls he had poured his heart into, he felt the warmth of support and love. The aroma of comfort food wafted through the air, wrapping around him like a comforting quilt. Eyes sparkled with memories of shared meals and laughter from years gone by, but as the fundraiser unfolded, the truth was cloaked in uncertainty. Each cheerful face reminded Joe of the stakes involved. His choices could reshape everything. Financial relief could also risk their security, their family's refuge. As Joe stood at the crossroads of this emotional storm, a burning question lingered: could he navigate through these turbulent waters and find redemption in his choices? Or would his well-meaning efforts ultimately cost him and his family more than he could bear? The diner's atmosphere buzzed with energy as friends and neighbors filled each booth, laughter mingling with the scent of fries and pancakes. Joe glanced around, taking in the faces that had become like family over the years. But behind the smiles, a storm brewed in his heart. He felt a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. Was he putting his community through too much, leaning on them when they had their own struggles? Sarah was busy coordinating the activity in the back, her warmth lighting the room with every smile she shared. He watched her, her brows furrowed in concentration as she served coffee and offered encouragement to the local band that had volunteered to play for free. It was her fortitude that kept their family afloat. Somehow, she managed to stay positive, even when everything else felt like it was sinking. "Hey, Joe." A familiar voice broke through his thoughts. It was Larry, an old friend from high school, holding a plate of Joe's famous chili. "You've outdone yourself, buddy. This stuff is amazing, as always." "Thanks, Larry," Joe said, forcing a smile. There was a sweetness to the day, a win that felt fleeting compared to the crushing weight of his decisions. As the fundraiser continued, Joe couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation drifting through the diner. "I heard Joe might be using his retirement funds to pay off those debts," a woman said softly, her expression a mix of concern and support. "Yeah, but that's risky," another responded. "You never know what could happen down the line." His heart sank. Could they really help him, or was he just dragging them all into uncertainty along with him? The evening wore on, and the fundraiser was a success. They raised a good sum that would help, but would it suffice? The simmering joy began to dim when he thought of the bills waiting at home. It struck him with painful clarity, this temporary relief couldn't mask the reality of their situation. He felt tears sting the corners of his eyes, but he fought them back. He was supposed to be the rock, the one who fixed things, not the one who broke down. Taking a deep breath, Joe channeled the energy of the room. "All right, everyone," he called out, his voice strong despite the turmoil inside. "I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Your support means the world to us." The applause that met his words warmed him, but the moment was tinged with a bitter reminder of what remained unspoken. As the laughter echoed, he made a decision. He would take the plunge into those retirement funds, but only after discussing it with Sarah. They had to be on the same page, even if it meant confronting fears they both harbored. He felt a sense of urgency building, a need to act rather than just hope. But as the evening wound down and smiles faded into farewells, he realized he was standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap. Would they soar together into a brighter future, or crash under the weight of their choices? Feeling more resolute than before, Joe vowed to talk to Sarah as soon as they got home, ready to navigate this tempestuous sea together. But just as he thought they might find clarity, a familiar face stepped through the diner door, someone he hadn't seen in years, someone who could tip everything off balance, his estranged brother. Could the arrival of this unexpected visitor bring the resolution they needed, or would it complicate matters even further? Joe's heart raced at the sight of his brother, Mark, framed in the doorway as if he were a ghost from the past. The diner's warm glow cast shadows on Mark's face, revealing only hints of familiarity amidst the years that had slipped by. Old memories stirred, laughter and fights from their childhood played like a reel in Joe's mind, yet it was the hurtful silence of their last years that echoed the loudest. "Is that really you?" Mark's voice was tentative, almost fragile. Time had shaped him, adding lines to his face and a weary tone to his words. "Mark," Joe managed, caught off guard. The diner quieted, the music fading to the background, and the eyes of the patrons danced between the two brothers, sensing the charge in the air. What could he say? The last time they connected, it had ended in heartbreak. "What are you doing here?" The question hung between them, heavy with unresolved tension. Mark stepped inside, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. I've been thinking about you." The phrases unspooled in Joe's mind like ribbons tied in knots. "You mean after all this time?" The bitterness slipped out before he could catch it. Mark took a breath, glancing around at the familiar diner filled with familiar faces, a sanctuary they both used to cherish. "I know I messed up, Joe. I've been struggling since everything fell apart." Their parents' deaths had created a chasm, one filled with unspoken words and paths that twisted away from each other. "Struggling?" Joe echoed, his chest tightening. "We're all struggling. I'm about to gamble away what little we have left." He could feel Sarah's eyes on him as she returned from the back, her energy lightening the intensity in the room. But as she caught sight of Mark, her smile faltered, unease fleeting across her face. "Joe, who?" "It's Mark," he said, interrupting, not entirely sure how to introduce this man who used to be part of their warmth but now felt like a storm front. "Your brother?" Sarah's surprise hinted at a deeper concern. How long has it been?" She moved slightly closer, seeking an anchor in Joe's shifting emotions. "Too long," Mark replied, his voice catching. "I'd like to talk, if you'll let me." The diners shifted back to their meals, having played their role, but Joe felt their gazes linger. He was the centerpiece of this unexpected reunion, caught between anger and a flicker of hope. Could Mark be part of the solution rather than a complication? "Talk?" Joe spat. After you left? After you turned your back? Mark held his ground, shoulders squared, then looked down, his posture deflating. I left because I couldn't face you. I was ashamed. I'm here for a reason. I'm trying to make things right. Joe's heart thudded in his chest, torn between resentment and the very human desire for connection. What could this mean? Could his brother even help when Joe, couldn't he even navigate his own life? Fine, Joe said, pushing through the anger. Let us sit down. Just, let's talk. As they slid into a booth, Sarah dutifully refilled coffee mugs, giving Joe an encouraging nod. A part of him yearned for this. He had missed him, despite everything, but would forgiveness come so easily? Look, I need to tell you about my life, Mark said, looking initially at his hands before meeting Joe's gaze. About everything that has happened since, but before he could continue, Joe felt the familiar weight of panic rising, so many unresolved issues swirling together. What if Mark couldn't deliver what he promised? What if this conversation only pushed them further apart again? As the night wore on, wrapped in the shadows of past and present, the tension thickened. Was this the spark of transformation or just another disaster waiting to unfold? The question loomed in Joe's mind. With the room buzzing softly around them, the future felt as fragile as a spider's web, ready to snap at any moment. What would come next? Would they find a way through, or would this be another chapter filled with heartache? Joe took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotion swirling inside him. Mark's eyes remained locked on him, a mixture of longing and fear reflected in their depths. This isn't how he envisioned their reunion. There had been no scripts, no guidebook for this moment. But the unease gnawed at him. Okay, Mark, Joe finally said, hoping to sound more composed than he felt. You said you want to talk. What has happened in your life since everything went down? Mark nodded, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit Joe remembered too well. It's been rough. After Mom and Dad passed, I didn't know how to handle it. I thought leaving would ease the pain, But it only made things worse. I felt lost. Joe shifted in his seat, a mix of anger and sympathy bubbling to the surface. You weren't the only one who lost them. You vanished, Mark. I had to pick up the pieces alone while you just disappeared. I was scared, Mark confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought if I stayed, I would drown in my own grief. But I see now that running away only made me a coward. He looked Joe squarely in the eye, determination hardening his features. But I'm trying to change that. The diner's clattering, the waft of grilled cheese, and the murmur of conversations faded into the background. The world outside felt miles away. Would it even matter if they faced the truths buried deep within their hearts? What do you want from me, Mark? Joe asked, the vulnerability sinking in. You want forgiveness? It doesn't work like that. Mark's expression shifted, his eyes shimmering under the diner's soft light. I don't just want forgiveness. I want to make things right to help you, if you'll let me. Joe's heart clenched. Help? Did he even know what that meant? What could you possibly bring to the table, after all this time? I've been rebuilding my life, Mark replied, his voice steadier now. I found a job, and I'm working on paying off my own debts. I didn't just come back empty-handed. I want to help you quit gambling, find stability. I know how hard it's been for you to keep this place afloat. The thought sent a shockwave through Joe. You think you can just waltz back in and fix everything with a few words? It's not that simple. I know it's not simple, Joe, Mark said fiercely. I wish I could erase the past. But I can't. I can only show you that I want to try. Just give me a chance. Silence enveloped them, only the distant clinking of plates breaking through. Joe rubbed his temples, overwhelmed. Could he really trust Mark again? Just go, if all you're doing is making promises, Joe said, forcing the bitterness he felt towards the situation. But I'm here now, Mark replied, urgency so evident in his voice. I want to give up on us this time. I know I'm not entitled to your trust, but I'm asking for it. Joe's heart battled against a wall of doubt. Could hurt turn into healing? Was their bond so broken that it couldn't mend? Just then, Sarah hovered at the edge of their booth. Everything okay? She asked, concern etched on her face. Yeah, fine, Joe snapped, still conflicted over his brother's presence. With a quick nod, she glanced between the two men, sensing the turbulence. Let me know if you need anything. As she moved away, Joe looked back at Mark, whose expression mirrored his own turmoil. They were both moments away from a breakthrough or another argument that could tear them apart. What if? Joe hesitated, thinking of all the possibilities. What if we meet again? Maybe if we start slow? Mark's eyes widened, hope blooming. I'd like that. We can figure it out together. As the tension lifted, Joe couldn't shake the question hanging in the air. Was this the start of something new, or would it lead to more pain? Just as thoughts settled in, the door swung open again. A figure stepped in, bringing an intense chill with them, immediately capturing both brothers' attention. Who was this new player in their fraying story? The moment the doorway swung open, a gust of cold air spilled into the diner, pulling both Joe and Mark back into the reality of their surroundings. It wasn't just the temperature that shifted, an unmistakable tension filled the space. The figure who stepped inside was a slender woman, her long coat flaring as the door closed behind her. The light from the neon sign outside cast an eerie glow on her pale face. Is that? Joe whispered, squinting as recognition hit him. It was Lisa, a long-lost friend from their childhood. She had been a constant presence in their lives until everything changed after their parents' deaths. In a way, her reappearance felt like opening an old wound, one that hadn't fully healed. Mark shifted nervously in his seat, not taking his gaze off Lisa. I didn't expect to see her here, he murmured, each word steeped in disbelief. What is she doing back in town? Joe asked, refusing to take his eyes off her. Lisa had left after tensions escalated between their families, and the last he had heard, she was living in another state, attempting to carve out a new life. Lisa's eyes scanned the room, landing on Joe and Mark. For a fleeting moment, she seemed unsure but quickly composed herself, a flicker of recognition igniting within her. She approached the booth, hesitation swapped for determination. Hey, you guys, she said, her voice a tentative blend of warmth and nostalgia. Mind if I join? Joe gestured to the vacant seat, caught between feeling pleased and cornered. Sure. Why are you back? After everything that happened, Lisa began, her voice soft but steady. I felt it was time to come home. I had some unfinished business. The statement hung in the air like a dare, guiding everyone's thoughts to the past, the heartache, the loss, the secrets. Mark looked at Joe, his expression troubled. Do you think she knows? It's been years, Joe replied, crossing his arms defensively. Why would she want to bring up painful memories now? Lisa's eyes darted between the two brothers, catching the unspoken tension. You're both still here, and I didn't want to let time pass anymore. She took a deep breath, fortifying her resolve. I've come to find a way to help, to make amends, if you'll let me. Help? Joe echoed, incredulous. After all this time? Lisa nodded, her gaze unwavering. I know I left without a word, but I had my reasons. I've spent these years working on myself, reshaping my priorities. I wanted to support you both, especially after everything you went through. Mark leaned forward. What do you mean? How can you help? With a hint of determination, Lisa explained, I've started a non-profit aimed at helping families dealing with loss and debts. I've also managed to secure some funding. I thought, if you guys are open to it, I could assist in getting your lives back on track. Joe's heart raced with mixed emotions. Was this the fix they both desperately needed? Or was it another false hope? I don't know, Lisa, he said cautiously, his skepticism bubbling up again. We've been burned before, I understand. But I promise this isn't just charity. It's community, And it can be a fresh start for all of us, she insisted, determination blazing in her eyes. Joe and Mark exchanged glances, the weight of their past hanging like a storm cloud. Did they dare open that door again? Could they allow someone back into their lives, especially someone who once walked away? Just as Joe opened his mouth to respond, the bell over the door jingled again, this time announcing a tall figure with a leather jacket and a hard gaze. The diner fell silent, every eye on the newcomer. Joe's pulse quickened. Who was this stranger, and what did they want? As the new arrival stepped closer, Joe couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again, and not just for the better. The atmosphere in the diner shifted palpably as the figure in the leather jacket approached. The dim light highlighted the sharp angles of his jaw and the intensity in his eyes. Joe's heart raced, it felt as if time stood still. Mark looked from Lisa to the newcomer, confusion etched on his face. "Who is that?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Joe whispered back, trying to focus on anything but the mounting tension. Memories of his childhood flashed before him like an old film. Lisa laughing, their families together, then the closure of everything. And now, this stranger stepping into their fractured world felt like another impending storm. The man paused a few steps away, scanning the room, before finally fixing his gaze on Lisa. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Lisa?" he said, voice low and gravelly. "Alan," Lisa replied, her surprise evident. "What are you doing here?" Joe exchanged a glance with Mark, the air thickening with new questions. Alan took a step closer, the weight of his presence heavy. "I heard you came back to town," he said, eyes narrowing slightly. "Thought it might be a good time to talk." Lisa's expression shifted. A mix of annoyance and regret danced on her face. "Not now, Alan. This isn't the time." She turned slightly away, redirecting her attention back to Joe and Mark. "Wait," Joe said, unable to suppress his curiosity any longer. "Who is this guy?" She hesitated, and Joe could sense her struggle to balance the past with the present. "Alan was an old friend. We were close before I left." "Close?" Mark interjected, his brow furrowing. "How close?" Lisa remained silent for a moment, the weight of years of history pressing on her. "It's complicated," she finally whispered. "But you should know that I made decisions to protect us." "Protect us?" Joe echoed, his voice thick with disdain. "What do you mean protect? You left without a word. You were part of that mess." "Enough," Alan snapped, abruptly cutting in. "This isn't the place to air your dirty laundry." His hard gaze softened slightly as he looked at Lisa. "But I need to talk to you. It's important." "Can't it wait?" She shot back, irritation flaring. "No, Lisa. It can't," he insisted, his tone firm but laced with concern. "You might not realize everything that's been happening, but it's bigger than you think." The tension was palpable. Joe could feel the fraying edges of his patience. Just as he opened his mouth to voice his frustration, Lisa spoke again, her voice tremulous. "What do you mean bigger?" Alan took a breath, his posture shifting as if weighing options. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "It's about your nonprofit, and the people who want to stop it." Joe's breath hitched. Everything they talked about, every hope Lisa had pinned onto this new venture, felt suddenly precarious. Was it really possible that her return wouldn't just reopen old wounds, but also plunge them into newer battles? He felt Mark's hand grip his arm under the table, a silent agreement to confront whatever storm was brewing. Lisa's eyes widened, realizing the implications of his words. "What do you mean, stop it?" "Look, there's a lot at stake here," Alan said. "And if you're serious about making amends, you need to be ready for the fight of your life." Joe swallowed hard, his doubts merging into a single terrible thought. Could this really be the fresh start Lisa promised, or was it just the beginning of another chaos? As the weight of those heavy words sank in, the diner felt smaller, the reality of their situation pressing down on them. Joe's heart raced, alternating between hope and dread. What had Lisa truly returned to face? And could they really trust her or anyone in this new chapter of their lives? The questions hung thick in the air, waiting to be addressed, while outside, the world spun unaware of the tremors rippling through their lives. Just as a cacophony of differing perspectives clashed in the booth, the door swung open again, sending a final chill through the warm diner. Another familiar face stepped through, someone who could tip the balance. Even further. Joe's chest tightened. Who was it now? The tension was tightening, and he knew that answers were desperately needed, but what if finding them would mean losing everything? The door swung wide, letting in a rush of cold air that contrasted with the warmth inside. Heads turned as the figure stepped into view, and Joe's stomach dropped. It was Sarah, Lisa's mother. Time hadn't been kind, her face was lined with worry, and her eyes held a fire that Joe hadn't forgotten. "Mom!" Lisa exclaimed, shock mingling with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Sarah's gaze darted around the diner, her eyes falling on Alan before settling on Lisa. "I came to find you. Your father, he has been asking about you, and there's something you need to know." "What is it?" Lisa asked, her voice a whisper now. "Not here." "Let us go outside please," Sarah urged, her voice low and tense. Joe's heart pounded. Lisa's parents? The shadow of their past loomed larger with each passing moment. Mark sat stiffly, visibly trying to process this unexpected twist. Alan shifted slightly, blocking the way. "This is about what's happening in town. You're putting everyone at risk, Lisa. We can't keep running from this." "I don't need a lecture, Alan," Lisa shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "I have a nonprofit to run, a community to help." "There's more at stake than you know," Alan continued, his tone steady. The raw urgency in his voice cut through the air like a knife. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the people who might be hurt because of bad choices we made in the past." "What do you mean?" Joe interjected, his own nerves beginning to fray. "What choices?" Alan's eyes flickered to Sarah, and suddenly the room felt charged with unspoken truths. "Your father has connections, people who don't want that nonprofit to succeed. They may come after you." Her voice was firm but laced with worry. Joe exchanged glances with Mark, uncertainty rippling through him. Lisa's dream, the dream they all supported, was now under threat. "What do you suggest? We hide? Turn back?" Lisa challenged, but the defiance in her voice wavered. "Not hide," Alan said softly. "Fight back. Together. But you have to trust me and your mom. There are things I should have told you before." "Like what?" Lisa demanded, arms crossed defiantly. "Like how some of us in this town trusted ones made choices that affected your family way back when." "I never wanted you to find out this way," Alan admitted, approaching her slowly, as if afraid she might bolt. Joe could barely breathe. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined. Lisa's involvement was supposed to be a bright new chapter, a chance to help others rise out of despair. Now, it felt heavy and fraught with danger. Sarah stepped closer to Lisa, reaching for her hand. "We'll figure this out, sweetheart. But you have to be willing to listen and to trust us again." Trust. It was such a fragile thing. Joe felt that tightening knot in his chest again. Could they genuinely believe that those they once cared for were now allies instead of threats? The diner's atmosphere grew heavier, filled with tension and looming revelations. Joe felt like he was on a precipice. One wrong move might send them all tumbling into darkness. "Please, Lisa," Alan's voice pierced through the thick silence. "If you want to help the community, you need to confront your past first." As Lisa stared into her mother's face, the shadows of old wounds whispered back at her. It was a moment that felt suspended in time, as if the world awaited her decision. With breaths held, they all waited. What path would Lisa choose? And what would it mean for them all? Suddenly, the door creaked again, and another familiar figure appeared, bringing with him the potential for reckoning. Joe's heart slammed hard against his ribcage. Was it a friend or an adversary? The night was still young, and now it teetered on the edge of chaos as new possibilities unfurled before them. The figure stepped inside, shaking off the cold like a wet dog. Joe squinted, his heart racing. It was Derek, the town's insurance agent and someone who used to be close with Lisa's family. His eyes darted around the diner, settling momentarily on Joe, then flickering to Sarah. A mix of surprise and apprehension tightened the atmosphere even more. "Derek?" Lisa's voice broke the silence, tension lacing her words. "What are you doing here?" Derek took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. "I heard you were back in town. We need to talk, Lisa." "It's about your father and some things that have happened." "What things?" Lisa asked, her tone sharper, almost desperate. Alan stepped aside, his face grim. "This might be related to what I was saying. We need all the information we can get." Joe looked at Lisa, her expression a mix of fear and defiance, and a part of him wanted to reach out to comfort her. But he knew it had to be her decision to confront these shadows. "First, let us step outside," Sarah urged again. "We can't discuss this here, not with all these ears around." Derek nodded, urgency flickering across his features. "There's more than just rumors swirling." "You're not safe, Lisa." The mention of safety unnerved Joe. He could feel his own pulse quickening. What did they want from Lisa? What secrets lay buried deep, waiting to explode? He watched her, a storm of emotions raging behind her eyes. "Fine," Lisa finally said, taking her mother's hand. "Let us go." As they exited, Joe felt a wave of warmth and trepidation wash over him. Mark followed closely, a silent support. They stepped outside, the icy air biting against their skin as they gathered beneath the neon glow from the diner's sign. "Your dad thinks you're in serious danger," Derek started, his voice barely above a whisper. "He has been worried about these debts, and the people after you are connected to more than just financial issues. They'll do anything to stop your nonprofit." "Stop us?" Lisa echoed, disbelief creeping into her words. "This isn't what I signed up for. How can they even touch me?" "They can and they will," Derek replied, stealing his gaze. "They've got resources and people at their disposal. You need to be careful who you trust." He looked at Alan and then back at Lisa. "I thought we could help each other, but you can't just play the hero here, Lisa. It's bigger than that." "But what if I back down?" She shot back, fire lighting in her eyes. "What does that say about us? What about the community that needs this?" Joe couldn't help but admire her strength. She was fierce, but this wasn't just another tough decision, it was life or death. The silence between them thickened as they considered the implications of her choices. "Derek, tell me everything," Lisa demanded, voice steady now. "I want to know who I'm really up against." The three in front of her exchanged glances, and the tension wound tighter. "If you're going to do this, you have to be all in," Derek warned. "No more half measures, or it could cost you everything." Mark's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing on Derek. "And what do we get in return?" "We're all in, too. Not just Lisa." "Protection," Derek replied, his voice firm. "You work together, you keep her safe, and you help us figure out how deep this goes. But there are no guarantees." Joe's heart raced. The stakes were now painfully clear. He had committed himself to Lisa and her dream, but doing so also meant unsheathing old wounds and battling fears that felt insurmountable. "Let us get to work then," Lisa declared, determination igniting her spirit. But just as they were about to solidify their next steps, a distant siren echoed through the downpour of the night, sending a chill racing down all their spines. "Things are shifting," Alan said quietly, tension evident in his stance. "We need to move." What did that mean? Joe shivered, not just from the cold. The night was simmering with danger. What were they inviting into their lives? As they turned back toward the diner, Joe was left with a burning question: were they ready for the fire that was about to start? The air outside the diner felt thicker, heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Joe followed Lisa, Mark, and Alan, their footsteps crunching on the icy ground. The distant wail of the siren faded, but the tension in their group was palpable. Each of them was lost in thought, haunted by what Derek had just revealed. "Where do we go from here?" Lisa asked, crossing her arms against the chill. She was trying to appear strong, but Joe could see the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. It was the look of someone standing at the edge, staring into the abyss. Derek shifted his weight, glancing back toward the diner as if it were a refuge. "Let us get to my office. We can talk without prying ears. I have files that might help us understand better what we're dealing with." Lisa nodded, determination flashing across her features. "All right. But we need more than just files. We need a plan." As they walked, Joe noticed a flicker of something in Lisa's stance, a resolve. She didn't just have a dream anymore, it was a battle cry. The nonprofit meant everything to her. It was about the community, her connection to her father, a legacy stitched together through his love for helping those in need. "Is this really worth it?" Mark asked, lacing his fingers together tightly. "What if we get too tangled in something we can't escape from?" "Backing down isn't an option," Lisa replied, her voice firm. "If we do, we're letting them win. I won't let that happen." Joe admired her fire. In that moment, he felt a rush of pride swell within him. It was more than just support, he was eager to fight alongside her. As they approached Derek's office, a small brick building tucked between a hardware store and a vacant lot, Joe noticed the drizzle had turned into a downpour, the splatters on the pavement creating an arrhythmic dance against the cold. They ducked inside, the warmth of the office wrapping around them like a thin blanket. Derek motioned for them to sit at a worn-out table cluttered with papers and a steaming mug of coffee. He slid a manila folder in front of Lisa. "Here are the debts, the names, and the faces. It's a tangled web, but if you're willing to dig deeper, we can start to unravel it." Lisa opened the folder, scanning its contents. Her brow furrowed with disbelief as she flipped through pages filled with financial records and ominous notes. "These are serious people," she breathed. "Why didn't anyone warn us about them?" "Fear keeps people silent," Derek replied, leaning back in his chair. "And fear will be their weapon against you. You need to be ready for anything." "Then let us be ready," Joe suddenly interjected, his heart racing. "We can't let them intimidate us. It's time we took control." The determination on Lisa's face surged, energizing the group. They were in it together now. The stakes had never felt higher. This wasn't just about Lisa's dreams anymore. It was about all of them banding together to stand against an unseen force. "First step," Derek said, flipping to another page, "we gather intel. We talk to people. Start with anyone your father trusted. You find out what they know, who they're working with." "Let us do this," Lisa asserted, her voice cutting through the haze of fear that had gathered. Just then, the overhead light flickered, and an unsettling feeling shivered down Joe's spine. "Did you feel that?" he asked, looking at the others. "The air's changing," Alan murmured, clearly uneasy. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the office, startling them all. Joe's heart jumped. What was happening? They exchanged wide-eyed glances, fear creeping in once more. "Stay here," Derek ordered, tension lacing his voice. "I'll check it out." Lisa's grip tightened around Joe's hand. "What if it's them?" Before he could reply, they heard hurried footsteps approaching, and the door swung open. "What's going on?" A hurried voice came from the darkness. It was a woman, drenched, fear mirroring Lisa's expression. "I don't know," Joe said, his heart racing. "But I think we're not the only ones who are in danger." As the tension crackled in the cramped office, Joe's mind raced with possibilities. Would they be ready to face the true storm that was coming? The air inside Derek's office felt thick with anxiety as the woman stepped into sight. A flicker of recognition sparked in Joe's mind. Kristen, the local journalist who had covered several town stories over the years. She looked frightened but determined, her hair plastered to her forehead. "We need to talk," she said, breathless. "Things are worse than we thought." Derek stepped forward, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Kristen's eyes darted around, as if she feared someone might be listening at the door. I was at the diner before I came here. I overheard a group of men talking serious stuff. They're planning something big against the nonprofit. They don't want it to succeed, and they're targeting the families involved. Why would they care? Mark asked, his voice tight with tension. Kristen took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. It's more than just a property or finances. It's about control. This nonprofit threatens their influence over town. They know if it succeeds, it could ignite a wave of empowerment among residents. They're scared. Joe felt the weight of her words settle in his chest, making him anxious. Their hopes had seemed fragile, but now it was clear they were stepping into a dangerous game. Lisa's determination blazed anew. So what do we do? Do we stand by while they try to tear us down? No, Derek said, his voice firm. But we have to play it smart. We need to gather as much intel as we can. Find out who's backing them. Strength comes in numbers. We have to rally the community together. Kristen nodded, her eyes brightening. I can help. I have contacts in the police department and around town. They might have more information on these men and their plans. Joe felt hope edging back into the room. Maybe they could turn the tide. Then we need to reach out to everyone we can trust. Friends, family, the community that stands behind us. The group huddled around the table, ideas sparking one after the other. Plans formed, turning into strategies, each person contributing their strengths. Joe felt a renewed sense of focus wash over him. This was no longer just about saving the diner or his family's legacy, it was about igniting a fire within the town itself. If they could come together against a common threat, maybe they could emerge stronger. As the conversation buzzed with energy, Joe stole a glance at Lisa. The fear in her eyes had transformed into fierce resolve. Life had beaten her down, but now she stood ready to fight, for her nonprofit, for their families, and for their community. He couldn't help but smile. This was the Lisa he had always known, the one who lit up a room with her courage. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder resonated outside, and the lights flickered again. Something felt like it shifted in the atmosphere. Cold air seemingly rushed in from every corner, signaling a storm brewing, not just outside but within their collective fight. The stakes had never been higher, they were racing against time now. All right, Joe declared, standing tall. We move fast. Let us meet outside the diner tomorrow morning to start rallying support from everyone. Get the message out. They want to see us united. This community is worth the fight. As agreement echoed through the group, a sense of determination nested warmly in their hearts. Yet, a sliver of fear still lingered, uncertainty clouded the night. Would they really be able to convince the rest of the town to stand with them against the shadows looming over their lives? One last look exchanged between Joe and Lisa solidified the mission. Together, they could navigate this storm and come out shining brighter than ever. The journey had begun, and the road ahead was fraught with obstacles, but there was something unbreakable within them now. A community ignited, a newfound purpose revealed. As they all departed, a smile graced Joe's lips. He felt lighter, stronger. This wasn't just a battle for his diner or debts, it was a movement for hope and unity blossoming in the heart of their small town. Now, as he stood outside the office, staring into the downpour of the night sky, Joe knew, tomorrow would be another day of fighting back. For resilience. For family. For community. And then it hit him with the force of realization. It wasn't just about winning or losing anymore, it was about continuing to rise, together. Don't leave this moment hanging, folks. You need to subscribe now to witness these incredible transformations unfold. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about Joe's journey and how they're standing up. And please, share instantly this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait, not even one more second. Act now.